It was hard to say when, exactly, the Galactic Nutritional Sciences Academy began laughing, but it had definitely started before Matteo even unwrapped the foil. He stood at the center of the demonstration chamber, stomach tight, fingers clammy, trying not to fumble the carefully assembled tray of soft-shell tacos. Rows of elite xenonutritionists, sensory analysts, and dietary compliance officers filled the steep seating tiers above, their luminous eyes and bio lenses trained on him like a dissection subject who'd wandered off the table. A low ripple of multilingual chuckling passed through the audience when the smell hit charred meat, garlic, cumin, onions, and the searing tang of his uncle's homemade Inferno salsa. Several beings recoiled. One licked a sensor and frowned. Another, an oozing jelly form, attempted to purge its olfactory membrane with distilled water. Matteo forced a smile. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary entities of digestive variance, today I present a traditional Earth street food, the taco. A shrill translator chirped somewhere in the crowd. Someone snorted. Dr. Yulan, the feathered chair-member of the Taste Safety Board, leaned forward, iridescent wings twitching smugly. A folded starch envelope filled with chemically seared protein and volatile oils. Intriguing. Did your species invent this during a famine or a war? Polite laughter. Matteo swallowed. No, sir, just Tuesday. Ulan preened. Then allow me the honor of the first bite. And that's when the room got very quiet. Matteo hesitated. Sir, I should warn you, the salsa is quite... But Ulan was already lifting the taco with two-pronged appendages, puffed up with theatrical bravado. I've eaten fermented Heller fungus soaked in ammonia. I assure you, nothing from Earth can. He bit. 2 seconds passed. Then, his wings locked rigid. His pupils dilated into vertical slits. A sound emerged, high-pitched, whimpering, and he toppled backward, limbs seizing, crashing through a tray of scent samples and landing hard on the platform floor. Someone screamed. The smell of scorched pepper oils hit the front row like a shockwave. At least 3 beings dropped. Alarms began to wail. And as the taco sizzled innocently under the heat of the stage lights, the scanners across the academy lit up red. Biohazard detected. Unknown compound. Isolate and contain. Matteo took a slow step back. It was just salsa. Medbots descended in droves. The first unit, a sleek orb fitted with fluid injection limbs and retinal diagnostic pads, zipped directly to Yulan's still twitching form. A chorus of rapid mechanical voices began overlapping. Spiking core temperature, dysregulated pulmonary rhythm, retinal overload, possible cardiovascular hyperstimulation. Another medbot rolled to the taco, deployed a containment dome, and sealed it with a hiss. Red lights washed the room. A voice came over the speakers. Lockdown in effect. Airborne contaminant detected. Evacuate Level 1 personnel. Matteo opened his mouth to explain, then coughed as his own throat prickled from the residual spice in the air. Tears involuntarily sprang to his eyes. A blue-scaled administrator was vomiting into a waste bin. A gelatinous delegate from Zafara 9 had passed out, its outer membrane still rippling. One of the Valtari analysts was speaking in tongues, pupils vibrating like tuning forks. Matteo raised his hand slowly as a pair of enforcement drones hovered beside him. Wait, I didn't poison anyone, it's just hot sauce. The drones pulsed red and fired restraint bands onto his wrists with a clinical hiss. Detained subject for questioning. 3 hours later, Matteo sat in a sterile holding room, clutching a decontamination blanket, still coughing sporadically. The air smelled of antiseptic and burnt oregano. Across from him stood Commander Rethus, a quadruped with mirrored chitin and a doctorate in foodborne toxicology. He tapped a data tablet with one claw, his compound eyes unreadable. You are currently being investigated under Interstellar Code 445, Intentional Introduction of Biochemical Hazard to a Peaceful Academic Environment. Do you understand this charge? Matteo groaned. It was salsa, from my uncle's recipe. It's not even that hot by home standards. It's just ghost peppers, habanero mash, some vinegar. Ghosts? Rethus narrowed all 8 eyes. Matteo blinked. Not literal ghosts, ghost pepper, Capsicum chinense. It's a species of chili. The commander swiped across the tablet. Preliminary scan results show 0 illegal compounds, no neurotoxins, no hallucinogens. and yet chairmember Yulan's respiratory pathways swelled shut within 6 seconds. His core temperature peaked at 44.2 Celsius before we stabilized him. Mateo's heart sank. Is he going to be okay? He's in recovery. The med team had to sedate his thermoregulatory system with direct cooling pulses. He may experience brief sensor hypersensitivity, and he can't look at the color red without flinching. I didn't mean, look, I swear, I was trying to show our food isn't dangerous, just bold. Rethus closed the tablet. The Forensic Culinary Division will complete analysis within 48 Earth Standard Hours. Until then, your Academy status is suspended. You may not prepare or transport any food items. Do you require sustenance? Mateo shook his head. Not hungry. At the same time, 3 levels below, the taco sat under a containment lens, surrounded by a team of baffled culinary scientists. Drivok stood just behind the barrier, arms crossed, skeptical slits narrowing. You're telling me this isn't a weapon? One of the analysts nodded, scanning a molecular breakdown. Nothing beyond organic acids, natural sugars, and capsaicinoids. A lot of them, enough to trigger neurological distress in 6 standard species. But technically, it's food. Drivok snorted. Food shouldn't induce seizures. No toxin markers, the analyst replied. No pathogens. It appears Earthlings consume this willingly. Drivok leaned in. Then it's not a dish, it's a dare. By the second day, news of the Terran taco incident had spread across the Academy. Memos went out. The Galactic culinary message boards lit up. The working term capsaicin catastrophe was coined by noon and merchandised by evening. Mateo remained in temporary custody, confined to an observation suite. No formal charges yet, but his academic future hovered in limbo. Earth's culinary integration application had been delayed, again. He sat by the wall screen, watching the public coverage. Some channels treated it like a biohazard drill, others like a joke. One stream showed a grainy loop of Ulan's collapse. Another sold novelty shirts that read, I survived the salsa. Mateo muted the screen. Later that evening, Drivok stood in his lab, alone. He stared at a vial of diluted Inferno salsa, now sealed and labeled Sample 4E, human-spiced substance. He knew the analysis said it was safe by Earth standards, but standards were relative. And curiosity itched at the back of his skull. He glanced around, then opened a small test chamber. A single drop of the sauce was placed onto a protein wafer. He hesitated, then bit. Nothing for 1 second. Then the heat hit. His inner membranes flared, his vision streaked, his chest spasmed involuntarily. He stumbled, gagged, and gripped the edge of the table, gasping like someone who'd just coughed up plasma. A pressure bloomed in his skull, behind his eyes like a chemical sunrise. Tears streamed from ducts that hadn't activated in years. For one terrible, brilliant moment, Drivok swore he could taste color. He dropped to one knee. 5 minutes later, after purging and retching into a waste siphon, he sat back, trembling, still breathing, still alive. His tongue throbbed. He licked his lips and whispered hoarsely, Fascinating. Drivok did not sleep that night. Not from the after effects of the spice, though those lingered with astonishing persistence, but because something deeper had awakened in him. A question, unshakable and foreign. He had consumed thousands of dishes from over 70 star systems. He had tasted fermented bone slurry from the outer rings of Velan, and drunk solar-simmered nectar that triggered euphoric bonding in 3 sentient species. But this was something else. He had eaten a weapon masquerading as a condiment, and his mind refused to file it neatly under pain or pleasure. It sat in his brain like a spark with nowhere to land. So, he returned to the lab at dawn. The Academy's experimental dietetics lab was empty at that hour. Officially, it wasn't authorized for food trials without a safety clearance team. Unofficially, Drivok had been granted wide access privileges after publishing his comparative digestion study between vapor feeders and cellulose gnawers. He scanned in with a retinal flick, bypassed the restriction notices, and began preparing his trial samples. This time, 1/4 concentration. Still salsa, still dangerous. He chewed, swallowed, waited. Less agony this time. The same radiant burst behind his eyes, but shorter-lived. Sweating, yes, a strange tightness in his jaw, but also an unmistakable wave of focus, like his brain had sharpened. His next steps, he knew, would need documentation. He spoke into his recorder. Trial 2A. Subject experiencing increased cardiac activity, ocular fluid production, and mild disorientation. Also, a feeling of alertness. Emotional amplification observed. Discomfort remains high, but oddly welcome. He paused. This substance isn't food, it's an experience. Elsewhere, Matteo lay curled on a plastifoam cot in his observation suite. A quiet knock startled him. The door unlatched with a hiss. A familiar face peeked in Admin Kellen, the only Academy official who hadn't treated him like a war criminal. She stepped inside with a cautious smile and 2 steaming beverage pouches. Chamomile analog. It's non-allergenic. Approved for cross-species use. She handed him one and perched on the desk stool. Matteo sat up slowly. Did someone else pass out from the smell? Not yet, though a janitorial drone attempted to incinerate a leftover tortilla it found in the trash bin. She gave him a sheepish grin. We're still working on calibrating the food recognition protocols for Earth cuisine. Matteo accepted the drink. Is Ulan better? Conscious. He screamed when someone walked in with a paprika sample tray, but his vitals are stable. Matteo stared into the steaming pouch. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to share something my family's proud of. We always make tacos on Tuesdays. My uncle makes the salsa by hand. He says it's not done until it scares the sinuses. I thought it'd be funny, cultural, you know, like an inside joke. I didn't think it'd trigger a lockdown. Kellen studied him for a long moment. Earth food defies every nutritional matrix we've developed. You marinate meat in acidic fruit juice. You burn sugars into liquids and pour them on plants. Your recipes don't follow thermodynamic efficiency, they follow something else. Something we don't have a word for yet. Matteo exhaled slowly. It's flavor, that's the word. No, flavor we understand. She tilted her head. You chase pain, why? He laughed without humor. Maybe because we have to. Maybe because we spent most of our species' history eating whatever didn't kill us. Maybe because surviving hurts, and we made a celebration out of it. Kellen nodded. The tribunal meets in 24 hours to decide Earth's culinary classification. If they label it a Class 5 risk or higher, your application is void. No more food exchange programs. No interplanetary trade. Your species gets flagged for unstable ingestion culture. And if it's under that, then human food becomes regulated under voluntary trial protocol, like Vrishna moss or Glor squid. You'll need waivers, she smiled, and a lot of warning labels. In the isolation wing, chair member Ulan reclined in a sensory null tank. Soft vibrations pulsed through the gel to calm his neurological overactivity. He flinched every time a nurse used the word spice. When his vision steadied, he found Dravak watching him through the glass. Dravak held up a data slate. Volunteer request. Culinary escalation experiment. Subject, Dravak. Ulan tried to scream, but the tank had already dosed him back into sedation. The next day, Dravak stood in a pressurized test chamber, fully suited and monitored by 4 medical staff. He had submitted himself for a formal trial, 1 Earth spice sample per hour, increasing in Scoville intensity, observed for physiological, emotional, and behavioral responses. He dubbed the study Project Capsaicin, Understanding Terran Sensory Extremes. Sample 1, bell pepper slice, no response. Sample 3, jalapeno mash, nasal tingling, mild sweat. Sample 5, habanero dilution, tremors, spike in dopamine equivalent levels. By sample 7, the infamous Inferno salsa, diluted only slightly, he was shaking. I'm fine, he said through clenched teeth. Proceed. No, said the attending nurse sternly. You're hallucinating a conversation with your dead mentor. You just said he smells like mangoes. Dravak blinked. He does. That's irrelevant. End the trial. Give me 20 minutes. I can document this. There's a moment right before the heat crests where everything else fades. Noise, memory, doubt. It's terrifying, and then it's honest. The nurse tapped her communicator. Subject is entering euphoria adjacent phase. Prepare hydration therapy. Dravak's skin flushed a deep chartreuse. He grinned, giddy. I get it now, he whispered. It's not just flavor, it's memory. It's identity through agony. Humans flavor their pain. They bottle trauma with vinegar and burn it into celebration. Sir, you're overheating. He collapsed mid-laugh. Medics rushed in. Mateo sat in the tribunal chamber the next morning, wearing the formal academy sash and a clean jumpsuit. His palms were damp. The taco incident had made it into 2 major Galactic comedy shows and a satirical holonovel titled Murder Rap: The Spicy Treason of Earth. He wasn't sure if that helped his case. The Grand Tribunal included 9 counselors from different species. Most were still wearing respiratory screens. The taco now rested behind a reinforced containment barrier. Drivak, pale but upright, entered late, aided by a hover cane. Counselor Thress, a furred being from the Gravel cluster, leaned forward. Drivak, you have undergone human spice trials? Drivak nodded. 7 samples, increasing in intensity, all under observation. And? Safe, in moderation. In larger doses, not so much. But not toxic. I experienced discomfort, hallucinations, and elevated adrenaline. No permanent damage. And your conclusion? Drivak looked at Mateo. They don't eat to survive. They eat to remember. Each bite is history, a story, a fire. Sometimes it burns. That's the point. A murmur rippled through the room. Counselor Fetra, crystalline and severe, raised a clawed digit. You believe this qualifies as food. I believe it qualifies as trial food. Like any extreme regional cuisine, label it, warn about it, but don't ban it. He paused. And don't mistake fear for danger. The council fell into private deliberation. Mateo sat frozen. After 20 minutes, the ruling was read aloud. By joint consensus, the tribunal declares Earth-style high-spice cuisine a Class 6 culinary trial substance. Approved for regulated trade, subject to clear signage, voluntary waivers, and consumption limits. Mateo exhaled, knees weak. The Academy's seal flared on the hollow display. Beside it, the official health warning appeared. Human food remains chemically safe, emotionally volatile, and extremely addictive. Proceed with caution. And bring milk. When Mateo was cleared to leave, he found Drivak waiting by the courtyard. You okay? Mateo asked. Drivak's cane clinked softly on the stone. My organs are still rebooting from the last taste, but yes, worth it. They stood in silence a moment. You know, Mateo said, there's another version of that taco with less heat. Lime crema, pickled onions, some mango. Drivak held up a hand. One day, but not yet. My brain still thinks cilantro is a hostile hallucination. Mateo grinned. Fair. Drivak looked thoughtful. When you serve pain with pride, it stops being suffering. Becomes ritual. That's a very human thing to do. Mateo tilted his head. You sound like a fan. I'm still a scientist, Drivak smirked, but I've applied for a research grant. For what? He turned slowly, walking off toward the lab towers. To open the galaxy's first spice cafe, full waivers, helmet rentals, cryo milk shots on every table. Mateo laughed. And behind them, far in the background, a medbot passed an open spice cabinet and short-circuited from the smell. 3 days after the tribunal ruling, the signs went up across the Academy food halls. Warning, human culinary items available on premises. Class 6, trial substance, consumption, voluntary. Immediate access to cryogenic fluids and gastrointestinal neutralizers, provided. Waivers required. Ask staff for milk. Mateo saw the first one on his way to his reinstatement meeting. The bold yellow triangle with the little cartoon flame over a taco was his uncle's legacy now, apparently. He had mixed feelings. But mostly, he was just relieved not to be on a prison transport back to Earth. He stepped into the Administrative Recovery Annex, a low-gravity wing meant for students returning from disciplinary hold. The room smelled like disinfectant, wet tile, and a hint of disappointment. Waiting for him was Director Ayena, a multi-limbed, silver-skinned administrator who did not waste words. You are reinstated, she said, with stipulations. Mateo nodded, clutching the small tablet that listed his new privileges and restrictions. No spice above planetary average. No public food preparation. No samples over Scoville Tier 2 without prior approval and a fire suppression detail on hand. He skimmed the final line. All kitchen activity subject to immediate suspension upon sensory system, distress alerts from surrounding individuals. Right, he said, because smell travels. Your aroma radius last week reached 15 meters, Iena said flatly. 2 students had visual distortions. One thought he could smell colors. That might have been the habanero mash. We are aware. She handed him a patch for his academy uniform, red-bordered, with a human emblem and a spice droplet icon. Effective immediately. You are Earth's designated culinary cultural liaison, she said. This status includes academic immunity for prior events, but we reserve the right to revoke kitchen access if you attempt salsa escalation. I swear I won't, Mateo said quickly. Good. You're scheduled for a moderated cultural presentation in 3 days. She fixed him with a look. No tacos. Mateo gulped. Got it. Meanwhile, in Recovery Ward Delta, Chairmember Yulan was being released. He emerged from the sensory null tank on cautious, trembling feet, wrapped in a thermal neutral robe, dark sunglasses perched where his ocular ridges met. Light sensitivity may persist for another cycle, the attending medic warned. Ulan waved him off with a shaky gesture. Do not speak to me of light, or heat, or cumin. He had spent 3 days reliving every stage of the taco incident. He remembered the crunch, the initial flavor, then the detonation in his sinuses. His thermal sensors had registered 1.3 seconds of complete feedback failure. His circulatory system attempted a panic flush that backfired and nearly shut down his wing function. Worst of all, he'd survived. He was a legend now, but not the kind he liked. The Academy comms had compiled at least 16 memes of his collapse mid-bite. One depicted him as a flaming comet with the caption, "He flew too close to the salsa." He could not show his face in the boardroom for at least another cycle. Still, there was dignity in survival. Barely. Drivok sat in his lab, wrapped in a thermal blanket and sipping carbonated fruit starch from a slow drip pouch. His vitals were stabilizing. His digestive lining had regenerated after 3 mild lesions, and he was certain his dreams were less spicy now. But his mind buzzed. He had begun reviewing human spice consumption rituals across cultures. Indian curries with scorpion peppers, Szechuan broths that induced tongue-numbing ecstasy, hot chicken so fierce it came with nitrile gloves. And then there were the casual consumption videos, humans recorded willingly, torturing themselves for amusement, recording their reactions as their faces bloomed with agony. It was unlike any other species. The common pattern in galactic food was sustainability, comfort, efficiency. But humans? They celebrated resistance, they flavored suffering, they pushed their limits again and again, not just to eat, but to feel something through it. Drivok understood now. Pain was not the byproduct of Earth spice. It was the point. And that changed everything. On the day of the presentation, the main amphitheater was packed. Word had spread that Earth's reinstated student was doing a safe demo, and most of the attendees were curious to see if the human would combust on stage again or at least make someone else cry. Mateo stepped onto the platform wearing his regulation apron and an embroidered sash that read, Cultural Exchange Ambassador, Earth. He wheeled out a tray. No tacos, no salsa, just neatly plated samples of lesser-known Earth flavor profiles. Sweet, sour, umami, and bitter. Spice had its place. But this time, Mateo wanted to show them everything else. This is a miso broth, he said, offering small cups. No heat, fermented soybean paste, complex saltiness, comfort food in parts of Earth. A few tentacles reached forward, one jelly being vibrated pleasantly after sipping. Next, candied ginger, a sugar-coated spice with medicinal history. Then dark chocolate, earthy, bitter, sweet. Then a small drop of soy sauce on rice, simple, ancient. He ended with pickled daikon. Earth's food isn't just aggressive, he said. It's emotional. Each flavor profile is a part of us. Spice is how we celebrate and test ourselves. But so is sweetness, bitterness. Every taste maps to a memory. A projection behind him flicked on, showing snippets from Earth. A grandmother stirring soup, street vendors shouting over grills, children daring each other to eat bright red chips. Flavors are language. Spice is just the exclamation point. A slow, rippling silence followed. Then applause, some hesitant, some enthusiastic, and one cheer from a floating mass that translated roughly to, I crave more root vinegar. After the presentation, Mateo stepped off stage to find Drivok waiting, standing straighter now, cane tucked under one arm. I'm impressed, Drivok said. You didn't nearly kill anyone this time. Progress, Mateo grinned. You good? I haven't hallucinated salsa demons for 2 days. That's promising. Drivok nodded toward the hallway. Come, I want to show you something. They walked together to Lab Annex 4, where a new installation was under construction. Transparent bioglass panels, extractor vents, cooling bays, hydration stations, and a menu screen with scrolling hazard levels. At the top was the name. The Spice Lab Cafe. Experience the heat. Sign the waiver. Mateo blinked. You got approval? Not easily, Drivok said. I used your tribunal case as precedent. Trial substances, when managed responsibly, can serve as cross-species empathy bridges. The ethics board hated that phrase, but the funding committee loved it. Mateo read the sample menu. Level 1, Paprika Breeze. Level 3, Tepid Jalapeno. Level 5, Crybaby Curry. Level 8, Regretful Vindaloo. Level 10, Taco of the End Times. He whistled. That last one's ambitious. Drivok smirked. It's your uncle's original recipe, with 2 safety waivers and a digestive buffer shot included. You're gonna traumatize someone. Only volunteers. It's not about suffering, it's about choice. You said it yourself, Earth food is a story. I'm just helping others read it. Chairmember Yulan did not attend the cafe's soft opening. He was spotted briefly on the other end of campus, making a sharp detour away from a hallway where someone was eating pickled jalapenos. He now wore a small sensor that triggered a silent alarm if capsaicin concentration exceeded ambient tolerance levels. A cautionary tale, used in 3 lectures already, but Yulan would recover, slowly, with dignity, possibly a lawsuit. Weeks later, Mateo stood at the cafe counter, watching as a 3-eyed visiting diplomat from the Quarnari sector shakily signed the waiver and took a bite of level 4 spicy kebab. The diplomat's eyes widened. One teared up. He raised a clawed thumb. Mateo handed over a glass of milk and smiled. You'll live. The galaxy had protocols for everything. Trade, diplomacy, shared transport lanes, even time-standard greetings. But after the taco incident, it had to invent a new category, culinary extremes, voluntary hazard classification. The entry was brief but clear. Earth origin foods possessing capsicum-based compounds at or above Tier 5 Scoville are to be treated as recreational culinary challenges. Consumption must be documented, voluntary, and supervised. Suggested adjuncts include dairy, electrolytes, and emotional support. The document included a reference photo, Chairmember Ulan mid-collapse, annotated with core temperature readings and sensor failure zones. The caption read, "Do not approach food without awareness." In the weeks that followed the tribunal, Earth's reputation shifted. Not by much, not overnight. But curiosity replaced mockery. Spice became a topic in xenodietetics lectures. Medical students began studying human heat tolerance with cautious admiration. And more than a few academy students took quiet trips to the Spice Lab Cafe, where Drivok's risk meter at the door glowed in amber as patrons lined up for experiences they weren't sure they could handle. Mateo worked part-time there now, in addition to his restored coursework. He'd earned a small corner of respect, tucked away behind warnings and waivers and the occasional fire suppression drill. It wasn't what he expected when he'd first applied to the academy, but then again, neither was bringing down a council member with a tortilla. Late one evening, Drivok and Mateo sat at the cafe's rear table, nursing cold drinks. The crowd had thinned. Only a few adventurous beings remained, huffing gently, cheeks flushed, sipping from milk globes with both reverence and fear. Drivok dabbed his brow with a chilled towel. I had to install an emergency eye wash station. Some species cry laterally. Still better than the guy who tried to impress a mate by eating level 10 without prep. I thought we were going to lose him. He's fine. He tried to write a will on the waiver form. Drivok chuckled, throat still faintly raw. I'll update the language. Add a no spicy mating displays clause. Mateo leaned back in his chair, letting his eyes wander across the room. The air smelled like grilled peppers, stewed tomatoes, and toasted cumin, filtered, scrubbed, and vented, but still warm, still alive. You know, he said slowly, when I brought that taco, it wasn't supposed to be a statement. It was just family food. I grew up with it. I didn't even think twice. Drivok sipped his cooling broth. That's precisely why it mattered. Because I was too dumb to know it was dangerous? No, Drivok said. Because you brought something real, not sanitized, not engineered for mass compatibility. You brought your culture exactly as it was, spicy, unapologetic, and personal. He leaned forward, voice quieter. The galaxy is efficient, unified, peaceful, mostly. But it forgets that flavor isn't universal. It's tribal. Earth taught us that food can hurt and still be wanted. That a dish can make you cry and still be sacred. Mateo nodded. We flavor our memories. And you flavored ours, Drivok said, lifting his glass. Mateo clinked his in return. To interstellar flavor. To human madness. Chairmember Ulan, meanwhile, gave his first public interview since the incident. Broadcast across the Academy's interstellar news hub, he appeared wearing full thermal modulation garments and a highly reflective facial visor. The interviewer, a soft-voiced arthropod, approached gently. Chairmember, thank you for joining us. How are you recovering? Physically stable, Ulan replied, voice clipped. Thermoregulation has returned, emotional scarring still under review. Some believe your experience has brought valuable attention to the complexities of human cuisine. Ulan clicked the datapad sharply. Their food is biochemical chaos, a test of pain disguised as tradition, but I admit begrudgingly that it is not a toxin. He glanced at the camera. It is culture. And your official recommendation? Ulan sighed. Label it, warn them, but do not ban it. The galaxy deserves to know the boundaries of flavor, so it may choose, wisely, whether to cross them. Months passed. Then, a galactic culinary trend began to stir. Spice clubs, heat challenges, Earth-licensed flavor-forged kits distributed across 12 systems. Demand exploded among species that had previously favored bland efficiency. Not everyone could handle it. Most couldn't. But it wasn't about endurance anymore. It was about the story behind each bite. At the edge of the galaxy, a traveling food barge called Burn Orbit began offering human spice-tasting flights. Each customer signed 4 waivers. They sold out weekly. Somewhere on Quarnari Prime, a wedding celebration featured trial tacos. Mild, sweet, symbolic. No injuries. Earth's culinary delegation, once an afterthought, now sat at the main table during interspecies food forums. And at the Academy, a new elective appeared in the catalog. Pain and Palate, the Human Flavor Spectrum. Instructor, Drivok, with guest lectures by Mateo Reyes. The last time Mateo spoke to his uncle, it was over a long-distance holo call. You started what now? His uncle asked, leaning against a kitchen counter, stirring something suspiciously red and bubbling in the background. A cafe, Mateo said. We do spice levels by consent. Emergency milk's free. We even have a flavor recovery room with blankets and cartoons. His uncle whistled. Proud of you, kid. You know I had to tweak the recipe, right? Put warning labels on the jars. I saw. Inferno salsa. Only if you really mean it. Good tagline. You changed the base pepper too, didn't you? His uncle winked. Trade secret. But I'll send you a fresh jar. Mateo chuckled. I'll keep it in containment. On the 1-year anniversary of the taco incident, the Academy hosted a cultural showcase. Booths from over 70 systems offered food samples. The Earth stall had the longest waiver, but the line stretched around the courtyard. Drivok, now wearing spice-tolerant dermal mesh, worked the condiment table. Mateo grilled tortillas. As the twin suns dipped below the Academy horizon, they served the last plate to a curious tentacled ambassador with a shockingly high spice tolerance. The ambassador took a bite, paused, then smiled, all 7 eyes twinkling. Your species, it said, makes pain taste like poetry. Mateo grinned. That's the idea. Behind them, the banner fluttered in the wind. Earth, flavored by fire, served with story. And above them, the stars blinked, unaware, but perhaps slightly warmer.